Our pace of living leaves us little time for leisure. Our program will give you a chance to experience the fascinating world of traveling, extreme adventures, hunting and fishing. Each week we will take you to the most beautiful places of Kazakhstan. The expedition to discover more about the mysterious Saur Argali or ibexes started in Ust-Kamenogorsk. Before we leave, Professor of Eastern Kazakhstan State University Konstantin Prokopov briefly makes us acquainted with the purpose of our trip related to the studies of the wild goats of the eastern region of Kazakhstan. In the frame of the regional project for research in ibexes, it has been planned to undertake the expedition in the rock massifs of Saur, Tarbagatay, Manerak, and the mysterious and the least explored area of the Kazakhstani part of Altai, Chindagatuy, which is situated in the mountainous and taiga area, where Kazakhstan borders Mongolia, China and Russia. We head for the mountains of Saur to start the expedition, the area which extends from Tarbagatay to the river Irtesh. The expedition is managed by head of the Zaysan Game Reserve, Aelita Ahmed Salim Kızım. We are assisting Eastern Kazakhstan State University named after Amanjolov to conduct research. From Ust-Kamenogorsk to the starting point of our expedition, we have to travel in an off-road vehicle. On our way to the destination, the professor tells us about wild rams that inhabit the territory of Eastern Kazakhstan. According to the Wildlife Cadastre, there are two subspecies of arkhars, the Central Kazakhstani or Ovis amon kolyun and the Altai species Ovis amon amon. The Central Kazakhstani wild rams are by mistake called Karaganda arkhars. They are the most numerous kind of the 6 subspecies of the mountain rams. According to the most recent data, there are more than 13,000 ibexes in the country. A small population of the Altai ibexes, no more than 40 species, inhabits the area to the west from Lake Markakol. From the territory of Russia and Mongolia towards Chindagatuy, one can observe seasonal migration of the Altai Argali species. The region of Saur is populated by the species of wild ibexes that are difficult to define as subspecies. Over the border on the territory of China, these species are called Avis amon syrensis or Saur rams, while on the territory of Kazakhstan we call them Avis amon kolyun, although they belong to the same subspecies.
Мы выезжаем на учеты численности архара, редчайшего подвида.
We have left to assist in the conducting of the census of the population of the rare subspecies of Argali goats. In eastern Kazakhstan we also have the Altai Argali and the Central Asian subspecies. The Argali inhabits central and southern Altai, and the Central Asian species inhabits the Kalbinsky Mountains in Manrak. On the eastern edge of the Saur Tarbagatay mountain chain, we can find a rare subspecies that hasn't been identified by our teriologists, and our job is to collect the data, morphometric and visual. We will assist the collecting data on their average age, gender and reproduction as well as their life cycle. Having loaded our bags with provision and stuff, we started our journey to the inaccessible terrains of the Saur Ridge in search of ibexes. Managing director of the game reserve, Kairat, assigned 2 inspectors to accompany us during the expedition. The professionalism of the guide is important not only when hunting, but also when carrying out census. In practice, a professional guide can notice a lot more wild animals in his binoculars than just an experienced hunter does, not to mention the organization of camping when traveling on horses. He should be able to manage horses, but also know paths in the mountains that are suitable for horses. Without this experience, the trip may be extremely dangerous. The method of census is simple. On the map, routes of the expedition are put. Their length is defined by the GPS and their width is measured by a rangefinder. Every 500 meters, the width of the census line is measured. In the mountains, it is more difficult to identify the census area than in a valley, as the specific landscape can make the measurements obscure. The location data processing takes place through the means of multimedia. Having found out about the population of the animals and its density per each sector of the territory, the data is applied on the whole map of the Massif area. This method reminds us of defining the average air temperature when ibexes scatter unevenly across the whole territory during the rut. Today in one place one can see hundreds of animals, but tomorrow there may be none of them.
Высокая концентрация архаров в местах гона не означает, что она также высока повсюду.
Dense herds of ibexes don't mean that the whole area is densely populated. We have covered a large area and have only come across small herds of the species, but most of the time we saw no animals. In the places where the animals usually gather, at the 7th kilometer, we came across 82 ibexes. We also spotted 32 wild boars and 20 red deers. The numbers are impressive, but we cannot generalize the data for the whole area. This would be wrong. Such population density among animals can only be found on absolutely virgin territories where there is no human activity, no cattle grazing, and where, unfortunately, there are no inspectors monitoring wildlife. Such data can be found only in absolutely wild natural places. Apparently, accurate data on the exact number of ibexes can only be obtained as a result of absolute census. But it is impossible to carry out the absolute census of the animal population. First of all, because it will be very expensive. Secondly, most of the ibex population is beyond the zone of engineering constructions of the border, where helicopter flights are not allowed and horse expeditions are only possible if accompanied by the border staff. The area of the Zaysan Game Reserve is 270,000 hectares, of which 180,000 hectares may be inhabited by ibexes, but the density is not even everywhere, of course. The only thing we know for a fact is that the main limiting factor for ibexes is their competing with cattle for food and poaching. Near Shepherd's Hut, in 5 to 7 kilometers from it, is the so-called death zone, where no animal can be found. The main reason for the existence of ibexes is their inaccessibility and lack of interest in the territories where they can be found and their remoteness. The animals are also safe partially thanks to the metal fence on the border. In December, the dawn here breaks at 7:30 am and it gets dark at 4:30 p.m. We managed to cover from 7 to 14 kilometers during this time. We tried to stay for the night in the cordons of the game reserve or in abandoned log houses, but for several times we had to spend the night in tents. The temperature was as low as 10 degrees below zero. But a good warm sleeping bag and the cold man makes sleeping in a tent in a cold winter night quite comfortable. Apart from ibexes, on the territory of the game reserve one can find red deers, wild boars and roe deers. Among predator species there are wolves, lynxes and bears. The latter are not found in late November as they are hibernating at this time. On a rare occasion one may come across a snow leopard. Here are some records from a field diary. This may sound boring to someone, but we think it's interesting.
Во время двухнедельной экспедиции, пожалуй, самый результативный день был 14 ноября.
During the 2 weeks of the expedition, we had the best results on the 14th of November. At the 7th kilometer of the route, we accounted 82 ibexes, 32 wild boars and 18 red deers. The numbers are impressive, but we cannot say that it's the same for the whole territory. Such populations of the animals can be found only in absolutely no human areas. The observations of the sour ibexes allow us to draw some conclusions. During the rut, the ibexes gather in certain locations, but if threatened, they may leave for another place altogether. During the mative season, they are more sensitive to the presence of humans, even if these humans are not threatening them. If a group of animals is scared, the vast majority of them may remain in the same place. But if 5 or 6 groups are disturbed in a short time, the ibexes are likely to migrate to a different area. In one place we observed dozens of different herds of ibexes, from just several of them to herds of 20 ibexes. Apparently, they didn't like our intruding into their habitat, as they left the area on the following day altogether. After that, during the whole week we couldn't see a single ibex. Then, when they settled down, they returned. The hierarchy in ibex herds during the rut is not stable.
Мы пришли к выводу, что в этой местности архары во время гона не образуют постоянных табунов.
We've come to conclusion that in this area the ibexes do not form steady herds. We came across the groups from 3 to 20 species, but the structure of their group and the hierarchy would change several times a day. Some females would leave, some would come over, some male ibexes competed with their rivals and so on. Once, we eyewitnessed the following situation. One male ibex stuck to 7 females, but then all of a sudden another male appeared and tried to conquer the harem. The stranger challenged the owner of the small herd of females. It raised its front hoof, signaling the rival, "I challenge you to a duel," from a distance of 10 meters. The harem owner accepted the challenge. The rivals ran towards one another and rose on their hind hoofs, hitting and clashing their horns so loudly that it sounded as a rifle shot. After a series of hits, the stranger gave up and ran away. The happy and excited winner was so involved in the fight that left his female herd chasing the rival. They ran up to the top of a plateau and after a ritual dance got on well with one another and started to graze peacefully. The females watched the fight with interest for a while, until the moment both males disappeared. Not being surrounded by either of them, they left to join another herd. According to the professor's estimates, at the Sour Ridge there may be at least thousands of ibexes. Their exact number will be known only after the accurate census of their population and the analysis of the subspecies category they belong to.
И биотопические, и биоцинотические условия.
Food biotopic and biocynotic conditions are favorable for a growth in their population here. The expedition made an impression on us as if we found ourselves in the Stone Age, when large herds of wild animals grazed on the territory of the planet that was not occupied by humans yet. The impression is pleasant, but this was only a first-sight impression. The animals are leaving for the areas where there is no human activity. Apparently, several hundreds of years ago, this is how the mountains of Central Asia looked like. What they will look and what they will be like is up to us and our current generation.